Good morning, everyone. As you know, the opening mitzvah of this week's parsha is the Bikurim, the first fruit. And notice, the Torah doesn't say you should bring the best fruit. The Torah says you should bring your first fruit. Why? Because beginnings are very important in the Torah and in Judaism. How you start something, as they say, you got to get out of bed on the right side. Because the way you set the tone, that's the way the entire day goes. That's why we begin our day with the words Modani. What better way to start your day with a declaration of gratitude and thankfulness to Hashem? And hopefully that's the way the whole day will go. You'll see everything through the eyes of gratitude and appreciation. So the Torah says, bring your first fruit. By bringing your first fruit to God, you're saying the first is what matters most. Well, this is now Shabbat before Slichot. Saturday night is really the beginning. We get up at night, we come at evening Saturday night, and we say the first petitions to God, asking for forgiveness for the new year. And it's so important to come to Slichos, and I invite everyone here. We're going to start at 9:30 on Saturday night with a chumzitz, like a farbringen to warm up, because you can't just walk into shul on the high holidays and expect to be ready. You got to spend a week in advance with the Slichot to warm up, to prepare yourself. And if you start properly, that's the way the whole year will go. Now, one of the prayers we'll say at Slichot, that we'll say throughout the high holidays, is the very stirring prayer when we open the ark and everyone rises. And we say, Shema Koleinu, hear our voice, Hashem Elokeinu, Almighty God, Chus v'racham aleinu, have mercy upon us. And the opening words of this prayer, Shema Koleinu, hear our voices. The question is, why are we saying hear our voices? Why don't we say, Shema Tfiloseinu, hear our prayers? There's a very novel interpretation. On Rosh Hashanah, we read about the story of Abraham and Sarah when Hagar has a child, Ishmael, and Ishmael is a bad influence on Isaac. And Sarah says to Abraham, send away the lad. And Abraham doesn't know what to do because Ishmael is his son too. And we read the story that Abraham turns to God and says, what should I do? And what does God say? Everything that Sarah tells you, Kol Hashatom Melech Sarah Shema Bikola. Once again, God emphasized, listen to her voice. So the commentaries say, you know what the art of listening is? Don't listen to the words. Listen to the voice. Hear the pain. Hear the anguish. Hear the emotion in someone's voice. Listen to your wife. Don't just listen to her words. Listen to her voice. And the same thing is on the high holidays. God doesn't only listen to our prayers. We say, Shema Koleinu, hear our voice. Maybe we don't have the right words to address you properly, God. But you can hear our angst, you can hear our feeling, our emotion that's attached to the words. And therefore we say, God, hear our voice. And that's the message of the whole high holidays. The highest point of the Rosh Hashanah is the blowing of the shofar. The shofar is not words, it's just a cry, it's a sound. It's the cry of the Jew. And the commandment is to hear the sound, to listen. Why? Because we have to listen to our own inner voice. Sometimes we're listening to our words, but sometimes you have to silence the words and just say, what is my soul calling out for? And that's the real art of listening. The art of listening is to hear beyond the words, to hear the voice of the person. And that's what we ask God, to hear the voice of our petition. The Baal Shem Tov, whose birthday was 2 days ago, tells the story of, to explain the mitzvah of shofar. He says there was a prince who rebelled against his father, and he traveled away to another country, and he became a wayward son. And one day, after many years, he decided to come home. But he came home not like a prince. He came home dirty and torn clothing, and he didn't look like the prince anymore. And he went to the guards and he said, I'm the prince, let me back in. And they said, you're the prince, you look like a homeless bum, you don't look like the prince. He says, no, trust me, I'm the prince. And he's trying to convince them, and finally the guards said, get away. They thought he was some peasant. And finally he burst out crying. And the king was in his palace and he heard the cry. He said, that's the cry of my child. And he went running out and he said, that's my child. And the father and the son embraced. Says Baal Shem Tov, we come to God sometimes and God says, I don't recognize you. You're not the soul I sent into this world. You're not the prince. But then we cry out with the cry of the shofar, and God hears our inner voice. Not even the words, but the cry. And he says, I'm your father, you're my child. And he embraces us and welcomes us back home. And so let us come Saturday night for Slichot, and let us begin the new year properly.